In 1993, the Journeyman Project's complex storyline and photorealistic technique made it an instant classic. Its fully rendered, first-person 3D environment set design standards that many companies are still struggling to top. Presto Studios and Sanctuary Woods are now gearing up to improve greatly on the basic model with the Journeyman Project 2, Buried in Time. The player will once again take on the role of Temporal Security Agent Number 5, a high-tech, time-traveling law enforcement officer. 6 months after the events of the first game, you wake up one morning face-to-face with your future self. He informs you that you've been framed for altering history, a very serious temporal crime. Fortunately, the charges have not been made against you, so you are free to start sifting through the timeline for clues as to who has set you up and why. Using your new, improved biosuit, you will travel to 7 distinct locations and times, from the castle of Richard the Lionheart in 1204 to a Mayan temple in 1050. All the gameplay is first-person and completely non-linear, so that the environments can be visited in any order, and there is a lot to explore. However, it is only by solving the puzzles and collecting evidence that you will discover who is framing you. The look of Buried in Time is very cinematic. The project's creative director, Phil Saunders, is also an industrial designer who still designs Nissans as his day job. He researched the historical locations involved in the story, including King Richard's actual castle, which is no longer standing. But from old documents and books, Saunders was able to recreate the castle brick by brick for the game. The visual depth of the animated worlds represents a quantum leap in complexity and detail over the Journeyman Project. Not only are there 5 more worlds to visit, each room required 200,000 to 300,000 polygons to render, compared to 10,000 to 15,000 in the original game. The player has a great deal of freedom of motion around the game environments, but this necessarily cuts down on the amount of interactivity possible with nearby objects. Instead of cutting down on the visual richness, the writers worked around the problem by prohibiting the movement of most objects as a way to prevent the player from changing the future. Professional actors in historical costume were filmed against a blue screen to insert them into the beautifully rendered sets. Now, a great deal of care has been taken to make the compositing seamless by making sure that the cameras were at precisely the right angle and that the lighting was at just the right level to match the computer images. Buried in Time also features numerous options to help adventure game newcomers. There is a beginner mode in which the character cannot die, and lots of optional online hints to guide the player through the game. Also, if the player makes his way to the space station in the future, he will meet Arthur, an artificial being who provides assistance if the player gets stuck anywhere. The kind of story complexity and visual sophistication that makes up this game does not come cheap in terms of storage space. The final game will take up 2 full CDs. Look for Buried in Time to appear on the shelves this summer.